Okay, the logo change is not our fault, but everything else about Cracker Barrel's current protections for LGBTQIA plus employees kind of is. Because Cracker Barrel's decade-long journey from blatant homophobia to being the front porch of pride was driven by queer activists using brunch and the stock market as their weapons. Welcome back to Yesterqueers. My name's Amanda, and I'm a public historian of queer history. The year was 1991, and on February 27th, a lesbian cook named Cheryl Somerville was fired from her job at a Cracker Barrel in Douglasville, Georgia. Her termination notice said that the employee is being fired due to violation of company policy. The employee is gay. If you'd asked Cheryl that morning if she could be fired for being gay, she would have been certain that that was illegal, but it wasn't. In 1991, only one state protected workers in the private sector from discrimination based on sexual orientation, Wisconsin. And there were no federal laws to protect queer people's employment until 2020. While other companies were at least trying to mask their homophobia in the early 90s, Cracker Barrel leaned in. In January of 1991, they instituted a policy whereby employees whose sexual preferences fail to demonstrate normal heterosexual values, which have been the foundation of families in our society, would be fired regardless of their job performance. Cheryl was one of at least 15 people who were fired immediately under the new policy. As you can imagine, this did not go over well with the queer community that was still trying to process not just the loss, but also the casual cruelty and vicious neglect that we'd suffered during the first decade of the AIDS crisis. The protests were immediate, as was the news coverage. Cheryl and her wife, who had never done anything more political than vote, were suddenly the face of a movement, thrust out of their quiet, small-town lives and into a national firestorm as they told Cheryl's story to newspapers and on TV shows like Oprah in 2020. They were also arrested at multiple protests, which did force representatives from Cracker Barrel to admit on the record that Cheryl was a good employee who was fired solely because she was gay. Activists kept up the pressure on Cracker Barrel for months, organizing pickets outside of locations across the Southeast. On August 11th, a warm and sunny Sunday, 150 activists gathered in Nashville for a regional protest. They had an early morning rally keynoted by Cheryl, and then they caravanned to the company's flagship store in Lebanon, Tennessee. According to the press release put out afterwards, activists occupied 97% of the tables at the restaurant, ordering the required cup of coffee or soda and staying for 3 hours. Queer Nation Atlanta members picketed outside because a court order barred them from entering any Cracker Barrel establishment because of previous protests. Sunday brunch at Cracker Barrel was effectively halted by this action because brunch is the queer secret weapon. Cracker Barrel eventually rescinded their explicitly homophobic policy, but they refused to change the company's official non-discrimination policy to offer protections for LGBTQIA+ employees. It was a Queer Nation Atlanta member named Carl Owens who had the idea for the stock buy. In a December 1991 letter to the editor of the Southern Voice, Owens urged individual gays and lesbians across the United States to purchase a single share of Cracker Barrel stock. The intent of the Buy One campaign was to have thousands of single-share owners who would have voting power as shareholders, a concrete example of the community's power and presence. Owens sent similar letters to more than 100 publications. Now, please remember that 1991 is pre-internet. That's actually the year that the World Wide Web opened to the general public, and nobody was using it yet. Cell phones weren't even really a thing yet. And buying stock required setting up an account with a stockbroker, which was a whole thing. So the fact that this idea caught on and gained momentum is nothing short of remarkable. Cracker Barrel had 4,500 shareholders in 1991. By 1993, they had 11,500, and by 2002, more than 15,000. The movement also gained two powerful but unlikely allies. The New York City Employee Retirement System, which administers the pensions of hundreds of thousands of retired New York City employees, and the Sisters of Mercy. No, not the band, the nuns, the ones with all the hospitals. Specifically, their asset management program, which managed the endowment and the operating funds for Sisters of Mercy and Mercy Ministries. I could not explain the nuances of investing if I wanted to, so here's the bottom line. Getting a few thousand queer people to buy single shares of a company so that they have voting power is outstanding. Getting huge funds to buy up lots of stock in support of your goals is phenomenal. During the 1992 shareholder meeting, in a scene that I wish had been captured on camera, Carl Owens and the NYC ERS rep Patrick Doherty told the Cracker Barrel CEO Dan Evans to his face that bias is bad business. Cracker Barrel tried to get the Securities and Exchange Commission to block Owens' plans. So the NYC ERS, joined by the United Trust Company and part of the Methodist Church, sued, saying that Cracker Barrel had a long-standing precedent of allowing shareholders to vote on equal employment policies. The SEC told Cracker Barrel that they were on their own. What followed was a decade of nasty shareholder infighting. Every single year, either Owens or the NYCERS, they traded off, put forth a proposal for an amended non discrimination policy. And for 9 years in a row, they failed to draw a majority vote at the annual shareholder meeting. Finally, after a decade of pressure and tireless work by hundreds of activists and allies, Cracker Barrel's board of directors changed its non discrimination policy in 2002. A shareholder vote was deemed unnecessary since 58% of the shareholders were already on record as being in support of the new policy. At the time, a company spokesperson named Julie Davis brushed off this enormous win as a simple matter of listening to shareholders. Yeah, Julie, so simple. That's it for today. As always, more information, including sources and further reading, is available in the usual place.